Factory workers, miners, construction crews, truck drivers, these aren't just people doing physically demanding jobs. Increasingly, they are becoming the unacknowledged front line of an invisible neurological crisis. While most of the public discourse around air pollution focuses on urban smog and traffic-choked school zones, a more insidious exposure is happening right where people work. New research suggests that prolonged occupational exposure to airborne pollutants, especially in heavy industry and transport, may dramatically increase the risk of cognitive decline, memory loss, and full-blown dementia. And unlike background city pollution, the doses encountered in these jobs are often far higher, more sustained, and loaded with specific neurotoxic agents. The data is both disturbing and long overdue. A growing number of studies now show that workers in certain sectors, construction, mining, welding, long-haul trucking, metal manufacturing, have elevated risks of Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and other forms of cognitive impairment. The culprits aren't mystery chemicals, they're right there in the job description. Diesel exhaust, lead dust, solvent fumes, silica, and fine particulates generated by cutting, welding, drilling, and operating heavy machinery. The air in many of these workplaces is essentially a cocktail of brain-damaging particles, and the workers inhale it daily. The biological mechanisms are chillingly well understood. When inhaled, ultra-fine particles like PM2.5 and smaller bypass the body's usual filters, enter the lungs, and cross into the bloodstream. From there, they can travel to the brain directly via the olfactory nerve or indirectly through circulation. Once in the brain, they activate microglia, our brain's immune cells, which go into overdrive trying to clear the debris. Chronic exposure keeps these microglia in a state of constant activation, leading to long-term neuroinflammation. This has been closely linked to the progressive brain damage seen in dementia, especially Alzheimer's. One massive population study from South Korea found that long-term industrial workers exposed to high ambient levels of air pollution had nearly double the risk of developing dementia compared to matched controls in lower exposure professions. A similar study in Sweden focused on transportation workers, bus drivers, train operators, logistics personnel, and found a significant elevation in both cognitive decline and early retirement due to neurological disease. Even after adjusting for lifestyle factors like smoking or socioeconomic status, the risk remained stubbornly high. The only consistent variable? What they were breathing on the job. Worse still, these risks often go unmonitored. Air quality regulations tend to focus on acute respiratory hazards, things that cause coughing, asthma, or lung cancer over time. The slow erosion of cognitive function that barely registers on occupational safety reports, which are still geared toward avoiding accidents and immediate physical harm. And cognitive decline doesn't show up in the short term. A factory worker exposed to metal fumes for 20 years may only notice the effects in his 60s, long after retirement, when dementia starts tightening its grip. But by then, the damage is already hardwired into the brain. The inequity here is hard to ignore. These jobs are often filled by individuals from lower income or minority communities who already face elevated environmental exposures outside of work. Add a 40-hour-a-week dose of airborne neurotoxins to that equation, and you have a recipe for deeply unjust health outcomes. These workers are not just more likely to lose cognitive function, they're less likely to be diagnosed early, to access specialist care, or to afford the kind of long-term support dementia requires. And the burden ripples outward. Early onset cognitive decline takes skilled laborers out of the workforce prematurely, straining families and increasing disability claims. It places new weight on underfunded healthcare systems and exposes cracks in the social safety net. It's not just a health issue, it's a labor crisis in slow motion, with vast economic consequences. Solutions exist, but implementation is painfully slow. Stronger air filtration in factories, better personal protective equipment, reduced exposure times, real-time air monitoring, and stricter enforcement of workplace air quality standards could all make a dent. But many industries are underregulated, especially in lower-income countries, or among subcontracted labor forces where oversight is minimal and health protections are often treated as optional costs. Even in high-income nations, occupational dementia is rarely listed as a compensable work-related condition, making it harder for workers to receive justice or treatment. What's galling is how predictable this all is. We know the brain doesn't like diesel fumes. We know chronic exposure to fine particulate matter is devastating to neural tissue. We know these jobs involve heavy inhalation of exactly those substances. And yet we continue to allow people to spend decades immersed in these environments, only to shrug when they start forgetting names, losing focus, or wandering off without explanation. So the next time we talk about brain health, let's stop pretending that dementia is only a product of age or unlucky genes. Let's talk about where people work. Because for millions of factory workers, miners, and drivers around the world, the path to memory loss and confusion isn't paved in DNA, it's built from diesel, dust, and decades of breathing what nobody else would dare to.